In today's market, buying a car can get really expensive really quick, and part of that problem is society's pressure on prioritizing visual wealth over actual financial stability, or what we would call stealth wealth. As a result, all of this leads to clouded judgment when it comes to understanding how much car can you actually afford based on your salary. So in this video, we're going to cover a couple of buying rules, a couple of guidelines to help you understand how much should you be spending on a car without going broke. We're going to jump straight into it with the 35 rule. Now, the 35 rule dictates that you should never spend more than 35% of your gross annual income on a car. So let's run through an example. If you earn £30,000 a year, your car should not cost more than £10,500. And if you earn, let's say, 100 grand a year, your car should not cost more than £35,000. This probably sounds too simple. Well, that's what you get on this channel, just simple finance. Now, the 35 rule is the most aggressive rule in this whole video. This is geared towards car enthusiasts that want a bit of luxury, want a bit of performance in their lives, and it's something that I don't recommend. Now, the reason I don't recommend this rule is because if you have other financial commitments, so let's say mortgage, rent, bills, childcare, or just whatever else you have going on, spending 35% of your annual salary on a car is going to reduce your disposable income by a fair chunk. So you have to ask yourself, if you're not an enthusiast when it comes to cars, do you want to be spending such a large chunk on a car? Or would you rather put that money away into other aspects? So savings, investing, those are the typical answers you hear. Or you could just use it on travel. Maybe you're saving for a house. Maybe you have other ideas which you need to save money for. Do those take priority over the car? That is the question you have to ask yourself. This then brings us to the next rule, which is the 25 rule, which, as you might have guessed, your car should not cost more than 25% of your gross annual income. And this rule is a bit more of a sweet spot when it comes to car affordability. The purpose of the 25 rule is to focus on getting from A to B, but in a little bit of comfort, maybe a little bit of luxury, but more priority on comfort and reliability rather than luxury and performance. So if we run for an example, if you are earning £30,000 a year, the maximum your car should cost is £7,500. Now, this may not sound like a lot, but the truth is, once you start moving away from, let's say, your Audis, your BMWs, your Mercedes, you'll be surprised what you could get for, let's say, £7,500. And of course, for £7,500, you definitely wouldn't be able to buy a brand new car. But later in this video, we're going to cover new cars versus used cars. And I'll also show you some of the cars I've owned from the age of 18 onwards, which have all fit within the rules we're talking about today. Now, personally, I recommend most people use the 25 rule, especially if you're commuting to work every day, because you want a bit of comfort in your life. You don't want to be driving, let's say, an hour a day in something that just isn't reliable and just uncomfortable to drive. However, if you do not care about comfort at all and you just want to get from A to B, so an example of this would be when I was 18, I didn't care what car I had, I just wanted a car, then the 10 rule is for you. And that's where your car should not cost more than 10% of your gross annual income. This means on £30,000, you should only be spending £3,000 maximum, which, if I'm honest, still gives you quite a bit of flexibility, because you could spend about £500 on a car if you really wanted to. Most people that fall within the 10 rule are going to start picking up cars which have high mileage or are just really old. So literally people that don't care about their car, or potential first time buyers. And I want to say there's no shame in that, because one of the advantages of paying less for a car is your ability to pay in cash increases, which brings us on to the next topic. Should you pay by cash or should you be using finance? Now, if I'm honest, everyone tries to spin this topic like there's a right answer and a wrong answer. Some people say like you have to do cash and finance is evil. Some people say finance is the way forward and cash is just a waste, like it's just a waste of opportunity cost. My personal opinion is there's no right or wrong. It depends on your own personal circumstances. Either way, we're going to cover both the advantages and disadvantages of both sides of the argument, so you can decide yourself what you want to do. So there are two choices when it comes to financing the car. You have PCP, which is personal contract purchase, and then you also have HP, which is just hire purchase. Now, PCP allows you to drive a car while making monthly payments, and at the end of that loan term, you can give the car back or you could purchase it. Whereas with HP, again, you get to drive the car, you make monthly payments, but at the end of that contract, that car is yours. Paying for a car in cash is pretty straightforward. You just take your cash, you take it to the person, the dealership, job done, the car is now yours. As a result, unlike PCP or HP, it's just quicker, it's cleaner, and it's just easier, I'd guess. Now, what are the advantages to actually paying with cash? Well, number one, there are no contracts involved and no interest rates. And this is a massive benefit in today's society, well, today's economy, where interest rates are constantly increasing. So you're not throwing your money away on interest rate payments, which will actually save you more money in the long run. Number two is there's no restrictions. When you take out finance on a car, the finance company wants to protect that car because it's their asset. As a result, you can't really modify the car. You just have to keep it as it is. You cannot touch it. No dents, no scratches, no modifications, no nothing. And number three, you can sell the car whenever you want. That might not sound like a big deal, but often it's quite nice having the flexibility just to sell your car, get rid of it, trade it in, because you don't know what might happen in the future. You may just need that flexibility. Whereas if you do take out finance, you could be tied down into that car for 2, 3, 4, even 6 years. Now, what about the disadvantages? Well, number one is cash is not king. Contrary to popular belief, if you pay for a car in cash, you are going to have less negotiating power. And that's because if you take out finance on a car, often that dealership will receive a referral fee or a kickback. So they're willing to bend the price of that car a bit more to entice you. Number two, you might not have the cash sitting in a bank account just to go use on a car. Number three is opportunity cost. Are we losing some sort of opportunity by sinking a large portion of cash into a car? Could that cash be used to invest? Could it be used in a business or whatever else you might have going on? Now, the biggest benefit to using finance to purchase a car, whether PCP or HP, is the ability to afford a whole range of new cars which might have been out of your budget. And this increase in budget means you might be able to purchase a newer car, hence has warranty, has better service history, more reliable, has better comfort, and so on. But with great power comes great responsibility, or I should say with great power comes a greater financial burden, which we're going to cover with some real life examples. Firstly, let's just dive a bit more into HP and PCP just to understand the mechanics a bit more. Now, with HP, you put a deposit down, then you make fixed monthly repayments. Now, those monthly repayments that you make, some of it will go towards paying off the car and the other portion will go towards interest. This means at the end of the long term, you will now own the car because you've paid off the capital portion and you've also paid your dues and interest. As a result, HP is a great option if you find a car and you want to own that car long term. Now, PCP is more of like a leasing agreement. However, you do have the option to purchase the car at the end of your contract. Now, with PCP, you have your deposit and again, you make fixed monthly payments. However, the only difference here, none of that is going towards paying off the car. That means at the end of your contract, you do not own the car because all those monthly payments you've made have just gone towards interest. However, at the end of your term, you can often do a balloon payment, which is like one large lump sum to buy that car off the finance company. As a result, what you'll find is PCP always looks much more attractive compared to HP because HP monthly payments are much larger. And that's because you're paying off the car and the interest. But all of this is just words. So let's run through some actual maths so you can see the difference between the two options. So let's assume you find a car that costs £15,000. Total deposit required is £1,000. That leaves you with £14,000 total cost to borrow. We want to take out a 3-year loan term. Now, when it comes to interest rates, HP always has a lower interest rate than PCP. If you're not being offered a lower interest rate on HP compared to PCP, then you need to question this. Don't ask me why, it's just a rule when it comes to loans which involve capital repayments. As per Halifax on the 15th of April, PCP would have an interest rate of 7.9% and HP an interest rate of 6.2%. This would give you a monthly payment of $271 in the case of PCP and $426 in the case of HP. Straight away, PCP looks like the much better option as it seems cheaper. However, if you would like to keep the car at the end of the 3-year term, with HP that's no issue, no cost since you've paid off the car in those 3 years. With PCP, as per Halifax, you would be charged a balloon payment of £6,938 at the end of the contract to keep your car. Therefore, when you compare the total cost between PCP and HP over a 3-year period, HP is the cheaper option should you keep the car. My personal preference is I prefer to own my car outright, and usually I just pay in cash. Now the reason I pay in cash rather than taking out finance is just because I hate wasting money on interest rate payments, especially in today's economy where interest rates are really high. If you secured an interest rate during COVID at like 1%, 2%, it's basically free money, but I'd rather not pay a 7% interest. I'd rather just use cash and have no interest payments at all and have no monthly payments. If you're gonna take out finance and PCP, you're just leasing the car till you die. You'll never actually own your car. That might entice you. Maybe you just want to change your car every 2 to 3 years, no strings attached, and yeah, that's for you. But if you're going to take out finance, I would recommend HP, because at least at the end of a HP contract, you own that car. And it also limits you from buying a car which is beyond your budget, because you are paying off the car at the same time. The issue with like PCP is you could go for a contract which is £500 a month on a brand new car, and then just own nothing at the end of it. And this brings us on to the next section. If you do take out finance, especially HP finance, how much should you actually be spending? What deposit do you put down? What loan terms? What monthly payment should you aim for? What do we do when it comes to all of that? Luckily, this is all covered by another rule, but this rule is the 24-10 rule. So pretty simple rule again, like the rest of them. Let's start with the first portion, which is 20. You should put down a 20% deposit when you finance a car. So if your car is costing £20,000, you need to make sure that deposit is at least £4,000. Now, the reason we do 20% is from like a mathematical standpoint, it's deemed the most optimal when it comes to like monthly payments you make versus depreciation on the car. By putting down 20% as a general guideline, it helps you build equity faster, helps you offset that depreciation in year one, and it also lowers the amount that you need to take out as a finance loan. We will touch depreciation levels later in this video as well. Now, the next part of the 24-10 rule is the 4. So what does 4 stand for? Your term, your contract should not last more than 4 years. 4 years is the suggested amount because it keeps your monthly payments pretty manageable, and it also means you pay off the car before it's like fully depreciated. And the problem is, once you push out that loan term to, let's say, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, if they go that far, yeah, your monthly payments come right down and it seems more affordable, but you're just wasting a larger chunk of your income onto unnecessary interest rate payments. And on the screen, you'll see an example which I've taken again from NatWest today, 15th of April. So if we borrow £16,000 over 4 years, then total interest paid is £2,408. However, if we extend that loan to 6 years instead of 4, we would be wasting an extra £1,281 on interest for no reason. Like, what's the point? You're just chucking money in the bin. And the final portion of the 24-10 rule is 10. And the 10 refers to the fact that you should keep your monthly payments and insurance below 10% of your monthly income. Now, of course, that doesn't include fuel and maintenance and all that other stuff, but you should just be factoring that in separately in your budget. Now, the quickest way to calculate this is just to take your annual salary and divide it by 120, which will then get you the maximum monthly payments you should be making on your car. So let's say you're on £45,000 a year, that would give you £375 a month to spend on your car and insurance. Now, of course, you could probably spend more than 10% of your monthly salary on a car, and that is up to you. That's your personal decision. All I can do is give you, I guess, practical guidelines on what to do, but I gotta admit, sometimes I haven't even stuck to these guidelines, and I'll show you that at the end of this video with my own car journey. But it just all comes down to your personal preference. Do you want to spend that extra on a car, or do you want to save a bit of money and use it on traveling, I don't know, a house deposit, trying to retire early, and so on? But if you are a car enthusiast, then yeah, you can increase that to maybe 15 or 20% of your monthly salary. But I wouldn't start going beyond 20% of your monthly income, especially if you're living out and have like a mortgage or rent to pay. If you're living at home with your parents, if you wanted to, you could whack 50% of your monthly salary on a car. So yeah, it all depends on your personal circumstance. Now, should you be buying a new car or a used car? Another big question in the car topic space. Now, I have personally never owned a brand new car myself, which might give some indication to my viewpoint on this topic. But we'll start off with the advantages of buying a brand new car. And number one is reliability. In theory, a car fresh off the production line should have no issues, so you won't have to waste money on maintenance costs unless you buy a JLR car, which it's probably going to break down on day one. Number two is warranty. A lot of new cars come with like 3 years warranty, 5 years. I've even seen like Kia doing, I think, 7 years now. So again, that warranty should mean you're not wasting money again on maintenance costs. Number three is fuel efficiency. Again, in theory, new cars should be more fuel efficient, so you fill up less and you're wasting less money on petrol or diesel or whatever you have. Number four is better deals. So if you go to a dealership to buy a brand new car, they're a bit more lenient on the purchase price, and they're a bit more flexible on the finance packages because they're just trying to get these cars out into the market. Now, what about the disadvantages of buying a new car? Well, there's only two main aspects you need to think about. Number one, the cost. The cost of a new car compared to a used car is what, depending on age and model, but you could be talking double or even triple by buying a new car. And number two is depreciation, which not many people talk about. Depreciation is a silent killer when it comes to the value of your car. Unfortunately, if you do buy a new car, you're gonna lose a lot of the value on that car as soon as you turn it on, which brings us to the next topic, car depreciation. Statistics show that within the first 12 months of owning a new car, that car will depreciate by 20%. And by the time you get to year 3, that car could be worth less than 50% of what you paid for it. And I'll chuck some examples on the screen now, some popular cars, so like an Audi A3, a BMW 1 Series and a Mercedes A-Class. Just look at the visual graphs, look how it just sharply declines. So if we want to buy a used car, the sweet spot is normally the 3 to 5 year range, because at that point the car has already substantially depreciated at someone else's expense. And as you can see by the graphs, it tends to level off, which is when you will own the car if you go for use. And that is the biggest advantage to buying a used car. Not only is it cheaper, but it will lose value slower than if you purchased a new car. But of course, the flip side to that is that used car already has wear and tear, which means you might have more maintenance costs. But just remember, 3 to 5 years is the sweet spot. Now, of course, these are just general guidelines. On this channel, that's all we do, give guidelines. And we admit that these guidelines are here to be flexed depending on your personal circumstances. That's the one thing I hate about personal finance YouTubers. They always make it seem like their viewpoint is the right way. But personal finance is called personal for a reason. You have to flex it based on your own situation. Which brings me on to the next segment, just talking you through my own car journey so you can see how I don't even listen to my own rules sometimes. So at age 18, I spent £500 on a 2002 Corsa, and this thing was a death trap. Handbrake didn't work. When it rained, I would get in the car and it would just smell like damp. Water would be leaking from the ceiling. But it was my first car, so fully expected. We're not out here getting brand new A-classes at 18. We're dealing with £500 Corsas here. So this car was purchased fully in cash. So technically I broke my rules because I had no salary. So I spent 100% of my salary on a car. So already broke my rules straight away. But again, personal finance, being 18, having your own car, completely worth it. Forget the financial aspect of it. At age 22, I then upgraded, I guess, had a real job. So I brought an Audi A3, a 2011 Audi A3 for £7,000. So this car was purchased in full cash. So at the time of purchase, that car would have been about 29% of my annual salary. So it was on the high end. We talked about the 35 rule and how you shouldn't really be going that high. But in my case, I was living at home with my parents. I didn't have a mortgage. I didn't have any bills. So spending 29% of my salary on a car wasn't that much of a big deal. At age 23, so the Audi didn't last too long, had some engine problems. I brought a 2015 Mazda for £9,000. Again, paid in full cash. At that point, the car was about 30% of my annual gross salary. So again, really on the high side this time, but I was living at home. Plus, I had also factored in pay rises that I was about to get the next year, which was going to bring down that percentage anyway. So it wasn't that much of a big deal because my salary was effectively about to double. I then kept that Mazda for 4 years until I hit 27. And after again a couple of pay rises, I wanted to treat myself to something new. I'd sort of moved away from being a bit sensible and I wanted a car which was a bit reckless. So at age 27, I brought a Nissan 370Z 2015 for £24,000. This was 27% of my salary at the time, so it brought the figure down a bit, but I had to use finance for this one because I didn't have £23,000 just lying around. However, I did put down a 50% deposit with a 3-year payback term. So I really tried to reduce the amount of interest I was going to be paying for taking out that finance. Unfortunately, the 370Z didn't last too long, and a year later at 28, I then got an Audi A4 for £19,000 paid in finance. Again, went for a 50% deposit, so much more aggressive than the 24-10 rule. Did a 3-year loan term, so just want to pay it off as fast as possible so I can stop wasting these monthly payments towards the car and start using it to invest and travel. As you can see, my car journey has swayed between all types of spectrums. Sometimes I listen to the rules, sometimes I haven't, but I've always kept the rules at the back of my head. I've never broken the 35 rule. I've always tried to go cash, and even when I've used finance, I've taken the 24-10 rule and just gone so much more aggressive with it. Hope you enjoyed the video, and make sure you subscribe and like.